Okay, section 2.6 is diving more into proofs. This video is going to be a lot of just theorems. We already have our postulate theorem notebook. We haven't had that many postulates anymore, but now we are moving into theorems. So, what in the world is a theorem? Glad you asked. A theorem is a conjecture or statement that you prove true. So postulates are something that we just take as fact. We don't have to do any work to show that. But a theorem we actually have to prove. But we don't because somebody else did a long time ago. So we just kind of take them for what they're worth. So the first theorem that you need to know is the vertical angles theorem. So vertical angles, you already know what they look like. Okay, they look like you have two straight lines that cross. Those vertical angles are across from each other. So what that vertical angle theorem says is vertical angles are congruent. The end. So if that means the angle 2 is 35 degrees, then that means angle 4 is 35 degrees. The end. And let me say too, for these theorems, you don't have to copy them in your notes and in your notebook. You can just copy these in your notebook, so you don't have to write them twice. Okay? The next theorem is the congruent supplements theorem. Now, this I also feel is kind of self-explanatory. So, what this theorem says is that if you have two angles that are supplements of the same angle, so remember supplementary means 180, okay? So if you have two angles that are supplements of the same angle, then those angles are congruent. So what that means in picture form is if you have angle 1, 2, and 3, if you tell me the angle 1 and angle 3 add up to be 180, and you tell me the angle 2 and angle 3 add up to be 180, well, obviously angle 3 is angle 3, so if both of these add to give you 180, then we can say that, I messed up here, we can say that angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. Okay? Next theorem is the congruent complements theorem. Same concept as theorem 2.2, except now they add to be 90 instead of adding to be 180. So same concept, except if 1 and 3 add to give you 90 and 2 and 3 add to give you 90, then we can say 1 and 2 are congruent. Okay, next theorem, I think this is like pretty obvious. I mean, all right angles are congruent. Well, duh, if they're a right angle, they're 90 degrees, and if you have two angles that measure 90 degrees, of course they're going to be congruent. So I think that's kind of like that's just obvious. Okay? Theorem 2.5 says that if two angles are congruent and supplementary, then each angle is a right angle. So let's think about this. Supplementary adds to be 180. So this is saying that you have two angles that add to be 180, and those two angles are congruent. Well, if you think about it, I mean, that's the only way that you can get 180 with two congruent angles. They both have to be 90 degrees. Okay, those are the theorems for this section and really like for the future. So make sure you copy those in your postulate theorem composition notebook. And then the next video, we're going to talk a little bit more about examples. I'm not going to do any proofs in these videos because I did some with 2.5. We're going to work with those in class. So go on and move to video number 2.